My name is Derek Fortini. I'm the director of the Estes Park Museum. Today is September 23rd, 2024, and we'll be interviewing Janet Haynes, Jill Haynes, and Scott Haynes. We're at the Historic Fall River Hydroplant at 1754 Fish Hatchery Road. Okay, so we'll just start off here. Can you go ahead and give me your names and when and where you were each born?
I'm Janet Haynes. I was born in Denver and I was raised in Denver.
And give us your birthday too.
I was born on August 5th, 1957.
And I'm Scott Haynes. I was born on August 10th, 1962, and I grew up in Thornton and lived there for quite a while.
Were you born in Thornton as well?
No, I was born in Denver at the Lutheran Hospital.
I'm Jill Haynes. I was born in Denver, Colorado, November 19th, 1964.
Great. So let's just start with some family context. Who was the first in your family to come to Estes Park? I mean, we're looking back generations.
It would be our great-grandfather, Jacob Blubaugh.
Okay. And I was doing some research and it looked like he was coming from Illinois. Is that correct?
Correct.
So,
And then it sounds like he ended up in Lyons. Do you have any stories about that or what he was doing down there?
Well, they homesteaded in Lyons in the mid-1880s, where he was rock quarrying.
Okay.
And he had a team of horses that he would haul.
all the flagstone down off of the mountain on a horse-driven or donkey or whatever mule. And isn't that how he got killed when the load of the rock shifted on him?
He got hurt, but he didn't die.
It didn't kill him, but it broke his back.
I remember he got injured real bad. Rumor was there was a still up around there somewhere.
Yeah.
I can either confirm or deny that one, but.
So with your great-grandfather, Jacob, do you have any stories of him coming up here to visit or anything like that significant to share?
I don't remember any of that at all. Yeah.
I know he lived here for a while. He passed away.
He passed away in the house, same as Grandpa did.
So let's go ahead and start talking about your grandfather, George Blubaugh. I have it here that he was born in 1900.
Yes.
Correct.
Can you go ahead and just tell us a little bit that you might know about him growing up and then all the way up to like when he was getting married?
Well, he was born and raised in Lyons. Graduated from the 8th grade in Lyons, and he went to work immediately with his father right after that. I think after the Depression, he had moved to Denver for work, where he met his first wife, who passed away. And after that, he moved back up to the Lyons area. And a year after Margaret passed away, he met our grandmother right down the road here. There's a house that's got a big lake. She was ice skating and he was cutting ice, and that's how they met.
That place is still there. It's hard to see, but it's a beautiful little house. The lake goes right up to the house. It's pretty neat. I always try to look for that when I come up.
Do you know, so it would have been George and Catherine, correct?
Yes.
What brought them to Estes Park?
Well, first of all, it's actually Bernice Catherine.
Oh, okay, great.
Sorry, Grandma.
I didn't even know
Oh,
that.
yeah.
Because they were married and birthed, is that correct?
They were married and birthed, but she was teaching school in Estes Park. And then when they got married, she quit teaching and went back down to Lyons. And then when Grandpa got offered the job up here, it brought him, in 1945, it brought them back up to Estes. They actually eloped when they went to Berthoud.
That Texaco station down in Lyons too, right?
Yeah, it was a Red Crown service, the Lyons filling station. It was a Red Crown gas station.
Is that still there?
The building is, but that's about it. It's been added on to.
I remember some stories my mother wrote. Had a little booklet of the times of her life, the life and times of Barbara Haynes, and she mentions a couple times when they had him and the sheriff got in gunfights with people trying to rob the station at night and stuff. So that's pretty cool.
All in Lyons.
Yeah, it's right where Highway T's, and you can go either up to Estes or around the other way. It's just that building is right there. That's pretty cool stories.
So the majority of our interview will focus on George and his career and operation of the plant. But let's go ahead and talk briefly about your parents. Can you go ahead and state both of their names?
Barbara and Thomas. Barbara Lou.
Do you know where both of them were from, or where they were born?
Mom was born in Longmont.
She was born in Longmont and raised in Lyons. Dad was born in Chicago.
Do you know how they met, when they married?
It was a blind double date. And ironically, Mom would she would go to this coffee shop or whatever you called it back then, a diner. And she had seen this guy, and she kept, he was this hick listening to country music with these big glasses because my dad was legally blind. And then when she went on the blind date, it was him. And then they ended up getting married.
Just for some context too, what were their occupations?
Well, my mom had MS most of my life. I think some of my first memories one of my first memories of her was me and Dan. She took me and Dan down to the Coliseum in Denver and to see a circus or something. And she was walking with crutches, and progressed from there on to, walkers and then the wheelchairs and all that. But that was my first real memory. I remember Dan caught a bird while we were getting ready to go in there. It was kind of interesting. But that's the only memory I have of her walking with crutches instead of the walker. It was a pretty cool memory, though.
Dad had a background as an electrician.
Yeah.
He was an electrician for the Air Force. Mom graduated with a teaching certificate, but she was mostly administrative secretary.
Didn't she work at the Ward's cash room down on Broadway for a while?
And how many children did your parents have?
There was 5 of us.
And so we'll talk about your grandfather coming up here in 1945. Where did your parents end up living?
Mostly Thornton.
Yeah, I remember just Thornton.
I think when Ellen and Dan were little, probably in Lyons, because Dad had that small electrical business. Yeah. But I think that was very short-lived. Then they went to Thornton.
Dad being from Chicago, once he saw the mountains, he said he was never going back.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and get into George Blubaugh and working up here. So it's interesting that he starts working at the hydroplant the year that the town actually purchases the plant, which is in 1945. It's also fascinating to me that he worked at the plant for more than half of its existence, which is incredible. Let's go ahead and just talk about what was his background leading up to his employment with the town in Light and Power. Can you share a little bit about that?
Well, he was a lineman.
Yeah, he was a lineman.
He was a lineman. The service station, and he was very good with mechanics and electrical. Okay. Is how he ended up here.
Yeah, and he was a member of the Masons, and maybe that had a little something to do with, being in the right place at the right time, They look out for each other.
So we will be talking about the hydroplant, but for other contexts, do you know what other things he did beyond the hydroplant with Estes Park Light and Power?
So what's his life?
Yeah.
Well, he was a lineman, so when the power was out, they got called out to get power back to wherever. He was in charge of the Christmas lights and getting them on the mountains, and when the light bulbs would go out, they'd have to climb back up, and because if one bulb went out, they all went out. It didn't matter the weather, they were up there fixing them.
When I was doing some research, it seems like he was always out doing the Christmas setups.
Yeah.
And it's still a responsibility of Light and Power today, which is interesting.
They used to store all that stuff in here.
Oh, really?
Yeah, in this room.
That's interesting. Yeah, did he have any other stories about putting those up? I know they can sometimes be a hassle, especially with our big winds and everything.
Well, I remember sometimes they always had lunch from 12 to 1, and he would come home up to the house here for lunch, and he'd be drenched from the thighs down after climbing through snowdrifts to get up there to make sure it was taken care of.
Yeah, any other stories too for like going out and fixing lines? I know that can be a huge task as well.
Well, I remember when I was in 6th grade, I was at a camp for school out by Allen's Park, and he knew I was up there, and there was a big, huge power outage. And he told Bob Decker, he said, we'll get these fixed, but I'm making sure they get their power back first. And we did. But it wasn't always easy.
No. Especially he was kind of a short gentleman, and imagine the snowdrifts were a little rough on him.
So you mentioned Bob Decker, and you could maybe talk about him a little bit too, a little bit more anyways. Who were some of the memorable individuals or coworkers that your grandfather would have been working with? Do you remember any other names?
I remember Leon Sweetland, who worked here in the plant.
Was he the guy that lived in the...
No, that was Dick and Jenny, I think it was Williams was their last name. They occupied the smaller house up here during the hydroplant season. I remember Bob Decker. There's another gentleman I can see him. I just can't think of his name. He worked directly under Bob Decker.
Would any of these people have been people that you met as well?
Yeah.
Do you remember
Oh.
being met with that here?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Let's go ahead and again, we'll fast forward a little bit here, but can you describe what the Long Lake flood was like for your grandparents and just stories you might have heard from that?
It was life-changing and devastating.
Devastating, yeah. I don't remember too many stories around it, but I know that it rocked their world, of course.
Yeah, I know.
And things they went downhill a little after that, you know.
Yeah, I know when Grandpa decided it was a done deal. It was happening. He grabbed my grandmother, who was in a wheelchair, put her in the old station wagon, took her up to the turnout on the top here, and then he came down and powered this thing down so it didn't just blow up. But like I said, this was his life, so he had to save it. He had to make sure it wasn't gonna explode or cause more damage. So he put her safety first, and then his safety to take care of this plant. He was willing to die for it.
He came over that morning to start his shift, and he knew right away that there was too much water. He knew there was a problem, so he started making the adjustments on the equipment. And rather than wait the normal 30 minutes to recheck it, he kept coming back about every 10 minutes, and it kept getting worse and worse. So he knew the water was coming before anybody knew that, before the dam had actually broke. The lake had been leaking enough, and it was getting through, so before it actually ruptured, the river was getting too high and too fast. He tried to get a hold of some people in town, but it was too early in the morning to reach anybody, so he just kept going about his business, and then they notified him that the dam had broke and to get out, and that's when he moved Grandma up the road, and he still came back.
Do you know did he just join her up there and just kind of watch the water come through?
At some point, I'm sure he did, yeah.
Yeah.
Nothing more you can do.
Well, he got out once and he remembered that he had forgot his wallet and his false teeth in the house. So he came back by himself. He got those, and about the time they got back out of harm's way, he said it was like the boulders were like gongs banging together, and the roar was just deafening, and they watched the water come down.
That had to have been hard for them, very hard.
And I think from that point on is when his health just started declining, because like I said, this was his life, and you know, that was the reason he got out of bed every day.
And I'm thankful for the town that they let him stay on as caretakers for the property until the year he passed away.
Oh, yeah, let's talk about that a little more, because I was curious about that too, the aftermath of the flood. Did he ever mention, like, was there discussion about getting the plant back up and operating again, or how did they work out that situation where he still was caretaker?
At that point, they weren't discussing putting the plant back online, but they felt it was viable. But because of everything Grandpa had done for the town agreed to let him stay. And somebody needed to be here to keep an eye on the property. Yeah. Make sure the pipes didn't freeze, make sure things didn't get vandalized. So they were allowed to stay on.
I couldn't imagine what was going through their heads watching the water.
So I have it in my notes here, I was just checking, that he had in 1986. And so it would,
yes.
He did continue to work with the town until he passed away.
Correct.
So again, fast forwarding a little even more, what are your thoughts on it being a historic site now?
It makes me proud. It's a special place. Always has been, you know, especially to us and well, Grandpa and Grandma, but it's a kind of magical place, you know, especially when it was running. It was just crackling with energy and, you know.
The noise was very soothing.
Yeah.
It was very loud, but very calming.
It's a very loud roar.
Well, I think it's an important piece of history up here.
Yeah, that too. You know, it has to do with the Stanley and, you know, all that stuff. The Stanley steamer and all like that. Wasn't Grandpa involved in the maiden run up the river, up the canyon from Lyons?
I know he
had to be the water boy, run down to the
boy.
river and get water for the dams. For the
To put in the cars?
Car, yeah.
He was.
Stanley steamers.
And they don't make stuff like this anymore.
No,
There's some amazing stuff out there, but 124 years from now, it won't be there, and this is.
Yeah. This is a very, it was a thrill to just be here when I was, you know, around Grandpa and Grandma and tinkering around out there with Grandpa on the controls and watching things, you know.
And this was a great place for us kids to be kids.
Yeah.
You didn't have to worry about traffic. You didn't sit in front of the TV. You got out and explored, you hiked, you did things.
Yeah, you couldn't even hardly watch the TV when it first got cable. I mean, you couldn't hear it anyway over this thing.
Right.
So we were outside running all around the hills here.
Our toys were like a slingshot, a tape measure, a magnifying glass, a flashlight.
homemade bows and arrows.
Yeah.
You know, just hands-on. Everything was hands-on. It wasn't just sitting. It was
And a pair of
getting out there and
binoculars.
getting dirty and playing.
I think that kind of made us who we are, you know, as adults now, and just, you know, a lot of kids have a place like that to go, and you know, especially nowadays with the telephones and all that. I mean, it was just us and the river and the power plant, Grandma and Grandpa. You know, nothing else. I mean, we just use our imaginations. Have a great time discovering stuff and digging through the old little junk,
Yeah, there's
the
an old
dump
dump
back
pit
there.
and
Yeah.
all those old antique bottles. And
Yeah, they get
it's parts of it are
squished
still
by the
back there.
pressure and the heat. There was like light bulbs that were flattened that still hadn't broke. And it's pretty cool. Whiskey bottles and cough syrup bottles and I don't know how many of those Grandpa helped put in there, but
A lot of them.
yeah, I'm sure he did. A little at a time.
Did any of you come up here, or like, would you recall seeing the plant after the flood and the destruction, or do you have any stories to share about that? Because I've heard a bunch of stories of just what this looked like afterwards, and that it was kind of just frozen in time from that day, you know, with mud, especially in the building and stuff like that, or the vehicle, you know, that kind of hit the side of the building that would have allowed some of the water to come into the building. Do you have recollections, or
Did you come up afterwards?
I think I did briefly, and it pretty well devastated me, you know. And
Sure.
it was just, I didn't know what to think or how to act at that point, you know. And
Yeah, when they finally opened the roads, brought Mom and Dad up.
Yeah, most of us came up.
As soon as they let us in, because we were digging things out and looking for, but I remember the old station wagon had spun around and it was still sitting on that rock by the other side of the house.
that old station wagon was all over the country. They went in there.
Right.
From Mexico out to Wisconsin, you know, slant 6 Dodge push button transmission. They were all over the place in it.
Yeah, it was a good car.
But when you first pulled up, you look around and it's so overwhelming. It's
just like,
where do you start?
yeah.
And we decided our priority would be to get the house and a good path to the house ready so Grandma and Grandpa could stay there. They actually came back the same night as the flood. They refused to leave. No water, no electricity, but
Yeah, and the flood didn't damage the house at all. It went under it, but it didn't damage anything in the house.
Wiped out.
And I think it's from all the debris that hung up on these trees. Just shot it just far enough around it that protected it.
One of those little miracles, like, you know.
so we kind of started cleaning with that at the house and worked our way out. And of course, there were a lot of people that
Yeah, I remember there were a lot of
wanted
people
to
milling
drive
around
up
here.
and just look, and you know, they didn't want to help because we asked.
It's like, if you're here, grab a shovel.
Yeah, I just wanted to see the devastation.
And the other concern we had was they were still looking for some missing bodies, which were discovered not far from here.
Just down the road where the bridge used to be, right?
So every time you're out walking around doing stuff, that's in the back of your mind.
Yeah, and I know Grandpa did multiple search and rescues from floods and fires, and so it was just stuff that was instilled us, you know, well, you start looking. That's what we did.
So it might be a little difficult to answer, but because I want to try to capture it from your grandfather's point of view, but do you remember him talking about kind of how the community has changed or had changed over time, especially being up here, you know, for 40 plus years like that? Not just the physical changes, but also like what the community feel. And then I'd also like to hear your own opinions about that here, and a few questions later, but can you speak to maybe comments he might have made himself that you recall?
I remember as kids driving around, he would kind of tell us about, you know, how things have changed, and societally, and, you know, the buildings, obviously, and just how, you know, a lot of tourists gumming up the works, basically. You know, he was a great storyteller, and unfortunately, I can't remember a lot of them, but I mean, every time we got in the car with him, he would tell us this mountain, that mountain, the old man mountain down there, you know. We went up over Trail Ridge, and he knew everything about, I mean, everything. He just was like an encyclopedia. So much knowledge that I couldn't even grasp most of it. And plus, I remember being yay big, and we took a trip up over the Trail Ridge Road, and they had me in a halter and stuff, so I wouldn't fall off the cliff. I distinctly remember that being in that thing for a minute, and that was not cool.
Yeah, Skylar, it was a dog harness backwards.
Yeah, a big one, because they used to call me Hoss because I was kind of big, but yeah, I remember Mom and Dad yanking on that thing.
He didn't like things as they were changing, because with change came new rules and more restrictions, and he didn't think it was necessary. Like when they first put in the bypass in front of the Stanley to come up here, he hated it. He just hated it. He was pretty old school.
Right.
Yeah, he definitely was that.
And I think we're all a lot like that.
You mentioned him being part of the Masonic Lodge. Do you know of any other clubs or nonprofits or anything like that that your grandparents would have been involved with?
I think Grandma was in the Eastern Star, and I believe I saw something related to the Daughters of the Revolution sometime way back when I was like,
Yeah, Daughters of the American Regiment.
yeah, Daughters of the American Revolution. I remember that.
Let's get into your childhood a little bit and coming up here. So when you talk about coming up here during the summertime especially, where were you coming up from? Where were you living?
We were all living in Thornton.
Thornton, yeah.
Okay. And when you would come up here, was it for the summer? Was it for a couple of weeks? What was usually the length of time?
Weeks on end.
Yeah, weeks on end, and sometimes we just come to visit for a little bit with Mom. You know, Mom had MS, so we had to get her back home to, you know.
What would it be like for everybody in such a small little cottage?
We were always outside.
We were outside.
I don't care, blizzard, sun, didn't matter. We were outside.
Yeah, we went in to eat.
Sometimes.
Sometimes, yeah. I remember Grandpa making the deviled ham, wood deviled ham, or fry up some trout or something, or Grandma would anyways.
Or we go into town to Brody's supermarket.
Oh man, that was fun times there.
Yeah, the first thing you did was go into town. You'd go to the supermarket, Ray, whatever his name was.
Ray Frey,
He'd pick
was
you
a
up
giant
and
of a
he'd
man.
throw
Throw
you in
you
there.
up on his shoulders, man. He was a big dude and walk us all around.
He'd toss me in the air, and I'd always duck because I thought I was going to hit the roof. Pick out your cereal, and then Grandpa would go new jeans and shoes. You know, you always had to be, you know, spoiled rotten.
well, Grandpa growing up in the Depression, and when he did, he only got one pair of shoes a year, so good shoes was really important to him. If we showed up with holes in our jeans or holes in our shoes, we went straight to town.
To talk to a lot of old timers, you know, like that, you know, been through the Depression, and it made a huge impression upon them, you know, and later in life they like, you know, tend to spoil their kids a little more than most maybe, but yeah, they never forgot it. Always be frugal and wise with your money, you know.
Grandpa had a drawer in the kitchen that he kept candy bars in for us. If when they knew we were coming up, they would stockpile it.
Hostess, Little Debbie's, and candy bars.
Yeah, that one little drawer full of just odds and ends and wires and doodads. I was always digging around in there. Grandpa's hardware, extra hardware stuff. Yeah.
But we would come up and we learned to fish. We learned to hunt. Like I said earlier, we did a lot of mountain climbing and exploring. We would climb up the mountain behind us and visit with the Webermeyers, or go down the road when the fish hatchery was still actually running and spend time with the DeSantis. Grandpa would, in the wintertime, if it was snowing, he'd grab all the kids in the area. He had a 52 Chevy Bel Air, and we'd go to the end of the road, which is where Fish Hatchery Road now starts, and he'd put a sled and a toboggan and a rope on the back of that, and he'd pull us all the way back up here, and then he'd pull the next load back down and back and forth.
Yeah, that's awesome. I remember eating the rocks and the dirt and the snowballs and stuff. Yeah, he didn't go too damn fast, but it felt like it went.
It was fast enough, though, yeah.
Well, falling off of them things, you go for a good roll.
Yeah, you spin off into the ditch.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was fun. It was good.
Were there any other businesses that you really recall that you would visit downtown, things like that?
Well, the Wheel Bar,
The
and
Wheel, the
Dark
Continental,
Horse.
and the Dark Horse. And the train, and the go-kart.
Casey's train.
Yeah, Casey's
When
Train.
it was in town.
Oh man, that was my favorite. They got me an engineer outfit down to the boots and everything, and I got to ride up in the front with him. And, oh man, it was like anytime you went anywhere down there, you'd kind of get to the front of the line or whatever. Or we'd go drive the go-karts or whatever for free, just whatever we wanted to do. It was like everybody knew and respected our grandparents, till the town started growing a little bit, but most, anybody that'd been around would know them by name, by face, and they were very respectful and kind to us. It was just kind of like Mayberry, I remember us going with Grandpa to go fishing. He'd clip his fly rods on the outside of his car. He had these little clips in his fish basket, and way we go. It just reminds me of the opening scene, or when the show comes on, and little Opie and Andy Griffith are walking down the street walking up the road with the fishing poles. It was pretty cool. And he swore he'd disown us if we ever went lake fishing. That's a fact. He would turn over in his grave. I remember getting a couple flies stuck in my face area a few times in the beginning. I had to have Grandpa dig them out.
Well, and we would go up to Hidden Valley and go sledding and tobogganing and stuff. I mean, there was always something to do.
Yeah.
And when you came back, you slept good at night.
So we're going to do a couple more questions, and then we'll go ahead and walk around. But why do you feel like it's so important to do this interview today?
I think once you lose history, you never get it back.
Yeah.
And, these machines, you'll never see them anywhere else. People have gotten away with them.
Well, people think about Estes Park, they think about the Stanley Hotel.
Yeah, and they don't think about what it took to make that work.
Infrastructure for it, such as this place.
For it to be the first luxury hotel with electricity, it needed electricity. That's where this came in, because without this, it wouldn't be what it is. And so I think it's important for people to know.
Yeah, it's a huge part of the local history here. And like you said, all the machinery and stuff, you just don't see too many places like this, It's just like, keep saying magical. It's kind of a magical place. And I think a lot of people should take a few minutes. You see people come up and look around, and in the summertime and stuff, and it's not a great big place or anything like that, but it's got some fascinating equipment, and now a few stories, and it's I don't know, it's just a special place.
And it's a good place to learn how to, respect nature.
Yeah, we were members, proud card-carrying members of Smokey the Bear Club. I remember that. Yep, only you can prevent forest fires. Well, he was all honest about that. Watching out for the fires, I remember as a kid hearing a big lightning storm or thunderstorm would come through here. And a couple of times I had to run and sleep with Grandma and Grandpa for a little bit. And just thinking, oh man, it's going to flood or something. One day it did, for different reasons. But, oh man, that takes me way back.
Before we start walking around, I did want to talk about this area a little bit. This is where the 6 diesel generator would have been, and it was taken out in, I think it was 1958 to be scrapped. Do you recall, or I assume your grandfather had helped with this? Is that something that he had ever talked about?
I just vaguely heard a few stories, but seriously, from 1945 on, anything to do with this plant, he was here and he was involved in. It was his responsibility and nobody else's.
Yeah, I'm sure he helped. I'm sure he was the one taking it apart.
Yeah, I imagine it would be a huge feat,
Yeah.
except that was a huge piece of equipment.
There were precise steps. If you had to do this before you did that, or you'd be in a world of hurt. As far as hauling it out, I don't know who hauled it out.
I mean, everything in here, it has to be this, this, this. You can't skip anything.
And I think that was something that you had mentioned before, Janet, was that your grandfather, I mean, he wasn't trained to be a hydroplant operator in general. He was for this specific plant.
Correct.
It's because he had mechanical kind of mind and very methodical with things.
Correct.
Okay, so we've heard a lot about how loud the plant was. Let's go ahead and talk about how noisy was it inside versus outside?
It was deafening almost, yeah.
You couldn't have a conversation in this building when the machinery was running.
You'd have to scream to get somebody's attention and be pretty close to, hey. It was roared.
Yeah, that's why they have the light outside. It would light up because you could be in here and not hear the phone ring. So there was lights that would flash.
It's an air horn and the flashing light.
Like a klaxon and a little red light out there that would flash.
And that was just for the phone?
That was so you knew the phone was ringing.
So in here, did it matter if it was one piece of equipment, all of it running? It was just loud, no matter what.
I never heard anything but that one running, and when it was on, it was just full blast. Never heard these other two run. Wish I had seen it, but
These two had already been decommissioned, and that was the last operating one.
And then as far as the sound outside, how far away would you have to get before it started dying down and you could actually have a conversation?
about halfway down to the parking lot or something.
Yeah.
Well, actually, just a few feet to where
Depending on
the liar's bench was, so
Depending
they
on
could sit and talk about their daily concerns and what needs to be done.
Yeah, it's like a nice place where the sound bounced away, you know, a little more than like being over here did.
But it wasn't just the sound of the machinery, the water,
Just the roar.
the two combined, it was a roar. But it was very calming.
Kind of like what you would think of a tornado coming at you, just an all-encompassing roar. You could feel it, you know, you feel it in your clothes and on
The
your
ground,
feet.
the concrete vibrating.
A lot of water passed through there. That thing used to run at, what, 800 RPMs, that big old flywheel in there. I don't know how much it weighs, but just the wind off of that was loud enough, you know, just the machinery turning, yeah. I remember working on that, changing brushes and stuff on the armatures, and belt fell off once or twice, and a little leather belt there, being around for that. This is where I learned to keep my fingers out of the machinery. My grandpa was always, he'd do this, keep your fingers up, you know, watch what you're doing at all times, and I'm 62 and I still got all of them, so I'm doing pretty good.
Would he allow all of you to come in here to work on stuff?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have any memories that you want to share?
I was so much younger than my job was handing them tools.
Okay.
And it took everything I had. Obviously, you can see how big and heavy these are. You know, so it was a feat picking those up and giving them to them.
And I was going to ask about the tools, so I'll just follow up with it. A lot of people do ask when they're visiting, are those the actual original tools? Are they authentic to the hydroplant?
Yes.
Yes, they are. There's obviously quite a few not there anymore, but
Yeah, there's a lot missing.
but yeah.
And most of them we found after the flood out in the debris, and was just grab them, set them aside, clean them up, oil them, so they didn't rust.
Did they have them in a box similar to that you recall?
It was a bigger box.
Much
Yeah,
bigger,
I
yeah.
think it was a bigger, heavier box than that.
And I remember it being over there, but
Yeah, it was on that corner, and Grandpa had his toolbox over there, and his little workbench that he was always fooling around over there. That's where he gave me my first plug of Red Man chewing tobacco. And boy, did I not like that. Yeah, that was awful. That was awful.
Let's kind of keep going with that too then. What do you recall from the setup up in this room specifically from back then? Especially if this was decommissioned, how else was the space used then?
It really wasn't. The bench was here for the logs and stuff like that. And like I said, the toolbox was there. And
there was an L-shaped shelf,
yeah,
Yeah, in the corner.
so they could take smaller pieces and work on, and then put them back. And this stuff was decommissioned, but this stuff back here was all still functional.
I remember Grandpa letting me, we would read the meters here, the flow charts, and go there and adjust the flow of on the penstock or whatever up there. And man, that was cool.
Yeah.
It's like Frankenstein's laboratory, all black marble and brass, you know, and all these switches, switch gear and stuff. It was cool.
But you didn't touch anything without
him being right there.
him right there.
Yeah, we learned not to do anything like that early on.
I find it interesting because as young kids, we weren't allowed to come in this building without an adult. And now as adults, you can't keep us out.
Yeah.
To go along with the setup, it looks like that there would have been a stove over here.
It was a wood stove to keep the pipes from freezing in here and keeps the fluids from freezing up.
Keep the machinery moving around, you know, the lubrication and stuff. It get cold out here.
Yeah.
Do you know if the pole to throw some of the switches up there, if that's authentic or original, or do you recall that? You know?
I think it is, and I don't remember where it hung. I think that might have been there for a long time. That's no doubt the emergency shut off, I guess. I don't know for sure, but
I don't ever remember being that pole there, but I almost think they kept it in, everything that was storage was in this room.
yeah, I know they had a big bar to turn the wheels with when they had to start them up again. A big iron bar. Take about 5-6 people to spin it over.
Yeah.
We also get a lot of questions about this little window back here.
And we thought about it because that was the last, that was the last turbine they put in, and that was an addition. So originally, this was the main building, and I think that was probably just a window.
I'm very curious, what do you think of now as adults, or really notice when you first walk in here?
It's not as clean as it was. It was spotless when Grandpa was here. You could about eat off the floor. I mean, it was obviously the colors were brighter and all that, the paint job, but it was always just clean as a whistle.
Spotless. The first thing
Around a lot
to
of
this
rooms
day
and-
when I come up is I can hear it.
I smell it.
I can hear it
It's
and I
this-
can
this-
smell
the
it.
smell comes to me, I'm like, oh yeah, I remember that. And to most people, I would think, they would think it smelled funny, but it's comforting. Because I'm sure you can still smell the oils and the fluids in here.
But they were a lot stronger.
But they were a lot stronger, but I still smell them every bit as strong.
yeah.
So you're saying, like, as adults now, of course, they can't keep you out of it. What were your thoughts when you were a child? I mean, was it fascination? Was it fear when you would come in here as a child? Like, what were you really feeling when you come in here?
I, for one, was fascinated. I don't know. I might have been a little overwhelmed the first couple of times I got in here. I don't recall, but I mean, once you got past the noise and the lectures on how to keep your fingers, you know, it was comforting, you know. It's just.
I don't think you could keep us away from our grandpa.
No.
We were like his shadow. He was just that guy.
I love my grandpa so much, and that's why I try so hard to be a good grandfather myself, you know, and my grandma too. You know, I
So
try to
wherever he
emulate
went-
him.
Wherever he went, we went.
Honest and square deals all the time, you know, no BS. And
But we learned to respect property up here.
No meant no. And you never pushed that envelope because you didn't want to disappoint him.
What other important stories do you have that would be good to share to help people understand what it was like to be in the plant or an operator of the plant?
I think work ethics, dedication. You know, every hour on the hour, day, night, he was here doing his job. Every hour on the hour. And like I said, he was proud of what he did. His place was immaculate. The green spaces outside, they were always immaculate. You just learned to take pride in anything you did. Do it right.
Yep, I remember him having me push mow the old rotary mower out there and run that island and mow that and a little bit of grass up by the house. And then we learned the flag etiquette and ran the flag up and down every time we were here. You know, it's just hard to describe, you know.
Yeah, I think he just instilled in us honesty and do things for the right reason, not for not to be known for it, just to do it because you needed to do it.
Because it needed to be done, yeah.
And to help each other out.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, people helping people, you know.
That was kind of his thing.
Wish people were like that more nowadays, but it still exists a little bit. But you know, it's hard to find someone you can depend on. You know, especially for what my grandfather did up here, you know, and my grandmother too. You know, it took a lot of dedication and pride.
Well, to run the plant, they had 3 different operators. The operators would work 10-hour shifts. Then there was a down period between 2 a.m. and 6 a.m. where no one was here. But with Grandpa living right across the driveway, he was here. We weren't allowed to close the windows because he had to be able to hear what was going on, so that if something was wrong, he could get up and come over, even if it wasn't his shift.
Yeah, you could tell when something wasn't quite right, you know. He just immersed himself in this stuff.
So he's just always on call?
Yes.
Always.
Yeah, always.
He would leave for 2 weeks in September when the plant shut down. It was online from May through September. And then they would shut it down. He would take a 2-week vacation, and then he would be back up to start getting the Christmas lights ready and go back on the line. And the only other time he would be away from this overnight was Christmas Eve. He would come down to Thornton Christmas Eve, and we would have Christmas.
With a big old tree strapped to his car.
But right after dinner, they'd pack up and he'd have to get back up here. Because they would leave the water running and to make sure the pipes didn't freeze, and, you know, just to make sure everything was...
Everything in their power to make sure this was running perfectly and everything was as it's supposed to be, you know.
So even if it wasn't actually on season, he would still live out here, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
We talked a lot about, you know, some of the other things he did for light power and the interior of the plant and stuff. Do you recall if he would say anything about what it was like to maintain the pipeline itself, and those types of things, like kind of ancillary to the plant itself?
Well, I know there was, I remember times driving up to check the water levels and to check the dam and make sure everything looked like it was supposed to.
Yeah, I don't have any of those memories. He was forced into retirement the year I was born at 64. They made him retire.
Well, from the town.
From the town, yeah. But so then he couldn't, they didn't want him out doing some of that stuff at that age.
I want to bring it up just because it's, you know, right over your shoulder there, the shift changes. And you brought it up a little bit about that it took 3 operators. Are there any, like any stories behind shift changes, what that was like, anything that you want to share about that?
Well, the first person would come in, and the first thing they would do is they would look at, read the meters and check everything. Then they would pull the logs from the shift before to see if they'd had to make adjustments, to kind of give them an idea of what they needed to keep an eye on and where they needed to go throughout the day. And they would read the meters. Some of them had to be every hour, some of them were every 30 minutes. They had to keep checking. And when they weren't doing that, they would be cleaning or doing whatever building or machine maintenance need be done. And then at shift change, they'd meet outside and pass that information along to the next shift.
I think it talks a little about some of that stuff up there. I know it says if you can see it, clean it. You know, if it needs done, do it. Don't wait to be, you know.
Do you happen to know, there's a few names on there, there's Lawrence, Bud, and George for that specific shift. Do you know who that's in reference to?
I don't know Bud's last name. I do have a picture on my phone of Grandpa and Bud at shift change in here. Lawrence must have replaced Dick. And I really don't remember that so much.
It just seemed like Grandpa was always in here, you know. If he was in here, he was here.
Yeah.
You know, except for time to eat and sleep a little bit.
What are your thoughts or impressions about like having the clock, you know, the moment that it stopped from the flood on display, or having the water line in here?
No, I think it needs to be there.
Yeah.
Because you don't realize how deep that water was.
The force of the water was incredible.
Yeah, that has to stay just like that.
Because that's exactly when
was when it
the
happened.
minute the water hit.
So we'll go outside next, but before we do that, do you have any other thoughts in here, or anything else you'd like to share?
Well, I remember changing the brushes on the armature over there when that thing was running on that machine. The big carbon brushes right there, and then I remember the belt falling off once or twice, and just a leather strap there, and they managed to get it on there while it was spinning still, and without losing their fingers. And that's what I remember a lot of, is being able to work on it. You know, thought it was a big deal changing these little brushes out, you know, and controlling the flow of the water. And I don't know, just looking at this stuff, it still fascinates me to look at it, you know, the engineering.
Well, and you look at the size of this machinery and what it took to get it up here.
Oh, yeah. Came up on mule-drawn wagons up from down from Lyons. It's a long haul, and you know,
On a narrow road.
Technology like that on a very narrow road, yeah, and some steep spots. And those guys, the old timers, they could dream it. They would do it. You know, they find a way no matter what, whatever it was. And I wish a lot of people were a little more like that today, but you know, there still are people. It's just our work ethic was, I think, formed here, you know. But I remember everywhere we went, somebody would say, "Hey George, hey Kay," and if they remembered our names or whatever, I mean, it just, they were like celebrities. Anywhere you go, there was people that they knew, you know, and it was awesome.
I still run into people in Phoenix that knew my grandfather up here. Some of the old guys. Don Donnelly was one. Ed Hanks. Rocky, I can't remember his last name. And they all tease me because I can't back braid, but they all learned how to back braid from him. Like, well, yeah, but he wouldn't let me drink, so. And there was always the system. You had to do the back braiding, and when you got done, you had to throw back a shot, drop it, and just roll it, you know. But I never learned. But those guys all give me a hard time about that.
It's odd that it's so quiet, you know. It just seems like some other life went out of it, but it's still, you know.
Still here.
I can still hear it and feel it. And it's for a lifetime, and I'm glad that we're able to get our kids and grandkids up here, and you know, pass on the legacy is a huge part of who we are. So it's I try to do my best to make my grandparents proud, you know. Especially with my grandson and my daughter, you know. I learned a lot about being an adult by watching my you know, just how they treated us and what things we did and they did. Just a huge part of life.
So let's go ahead and talk about the hydroplant house itself. What type of memories do you have inside the home that you want to share?
God.
Well, I remember the push button lighting.
Light switches, yeah.
Push one button to turn it on and one to turn it off. It was all the old knob and tube lighting.
I remember when you'd be sitting at the dinner table or the breakfast table and all the wildlife coming up to it and looking in.
Yeah.
That was always cool. Eating your breakfast and have, you know, a small herd of deer poking their nose against the window.
Yeah.
That was always fun.
Or looking out and seeing the magpies
Right.
and the squirrels, chipmunks.
Chipmunks everywhere, yeah. Rabbits.
Yeah, like I said, but we didn't spend a lot of time inside.
No, I remember the door frames and the way the architecture is, you know, the door frames are, you see it a lot in like old westerns and stuff, you know, it was like this time period.
Yeah.
I see it a lot when I watch the old movies. I remember back to that, and said the push button electrical and
The kitchen cabinet, that was cool.
The kitchen sinks was about this high, and you have to bend way over. People were shorter, I guess, in those days.
yeah, they were.
How about some just general memories of the property itself? You shared some about being outside and fishing and things like that. What else can you share just about being out here?
Easter egg hunts.
Yeah, those were cool.
We always had Easter up here. We always hid the eggs in the baskets outside. We'd always lose at least one egg.
Yeah.
And the next year you'd kind of find it and you'd touch it and it would just disintegrate.
Yeah.
There used to be an old rock next to the porch there, big boulder.
Right.
I took many naps on that thing. It was
Yeah.
perfect. You could lay down, had a little pillow. It was my first horse. You know, I learned how to ride
Yeah,
on
it had
that.
like almost a saddle on top
Yeah.
of it.
And it was so remote, you knew if you heard a car, you were having company
Yeah.
because nobody drove up here.
Yeah.
Grandma always wore a wig.
So she had time to put it on.
She'd hear the car, she'd walk to the door, put the wig on, and then she could open the door and somebody would be there.
Grandma had real long hair too.
Right.
Back in the day, that was the style, and long ponytails. I remember that. I didn't see her like that too many times, but. And I just remember cutting the grass over there and running the flags up and down, and just playing on that piece of pipe that wound up down there.
Yeah.
We used to be up behind the garage up there. There's a little Y in it, and we'd slide down the Y. And
Yeah, we used to fit in that.
yeah, we used to fit in there a little. And it'd be all covered in tar, so we'd get all dirty and stuff. And we were everywhere, you know? Just everywhere. Walking up to the village up there, and I'd like to go up and look at the observation post up there.
Yeah, there was an old fire watchtower up there. And we'd race up and down.
Yeah, in the wintertime, Casey and I would slide down it because it was such a steep walkway that, you know, her dad finally had to put a fence on it because we kept landing on the ice.
Yeah, we was always up to something, just checking out
Getting in
everything.
trouble.
Trying not to get in trouble, at least not getting caught, but
Yeah, not getting caught.
we were pretty good kids though, I think. Especially for grandpa and grandma.
But I remember, you know, especially Easters,
Yeah.
all the family, one of my mom's, or two of my mom's cousins and their families would come up, and some friends of the family would come up and usually it would start snowing and somebody'd get stuck in the ditch or they'd run off the road. And
I remember going down the road one time in Grandma and Grandpa's station wagon and got off into the ditch a little bit, and for some reason you had a frozen bear tongue in the back, and it about rendered me useless, man. I remember that. And trying to get the car out of the ditch. Remember the time Grandma said, "Start walking, I'll meet you down here."
You.
We got clear down to the highway, or went down the highway a little bit. She said, "You guys must have ran." What'd she say? No way you could get that far in that much time or something. And I said, "Well, Grandma, we just walked the whole way, you know." And we were on our way down to 5 and Dime or something. I don't remember, but I do remember, fishing out over here and bow fishing, trying to, and just anything we wanted to do.
we built a lot of snowmen in the grassy area out there.
Yeah.
So there's still a lot of wildlife out here today. I imagine there's just as much back then.
There was probably more back then. There's been a lot of building up here and stuff, It's getting urbanized. It's right up there. It's just down the straight road a stretch. I used to work at the Harmony down there, and I'm, like the Airbnb where the bed and breakfast we stayed at wasn't there when we were kids, and it's all grown up a lot, They just, like I said, times change, and it can't help but run over everything else, progress they call it. So.
Well, Grandpa had an old pair of field glasses or binoculars, and they were always on the desk by the door. So if you saw something or an animal, you could zoom in and really watch it.
Watching the bighorn sheep up on the mountain there, and
Yeah, I remember when they airlifted the bighorn sheep up here. They brought them in harnesses and drop them down and go get some more.
those things are wild. It's just amazing. Something to watch. It's something to see.
Yeah.
Something to see, boy. And then going up on Trail Ridge and looking down on all this stuff, way down.
Yeah.
It's pretty awesome.
And I did see in my research your grandfather was noted as a hunter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How would you say it was different back then? Hunting in general, but also just being here on the edge of town and everything?
Go ahead, Jill.
Well, like I said earlier, it's he was born in 1900s, and you hunted when you needed food. So it didn't matter what season. If it was not an open season, he would still hunt.
Yeah. And he was grandfathered in before all the before all those laws.
But he also donated most of what he took. He would donate it to families in need.
Yeah.
He caught 1 million fish out of that river, and he didn't eat fish, but they were always in the freezer, and he always donated.
Yeah, the freezer was full of fish all the time.
So also being out here and the road, do you know if they ever get people stopping in just to see the plant? Or would they not really get so many visitors out here?
Once in a while.
Once in a while you get a straggler up through here, somebody got turned around or something, but yeah, it was pretty quiet up here, Sometimes you see people coming down the hill there and taking off towards the fish hatchery, but it was generally real quiet up in here, Just the family and friends of family and whatever.
I remember a lot of times when the town bucket trucks would come up here and just to help out or see what was going on, or when they would load up the Christmas lights onto the trucks to take them into town. I remember a few times being able to sit in the seat in the bucket and having them take it up and then bring it back down. That was always fun when you're little.
Yeah. Can't do that stuff anymore.
Got to have a harness.
You mentioned the Liar's Bench a few times. Where was it?
Shall we go?
I don't recall the Liar's Bench.
I think we paved over it. It was in this
Yeah, I
area.
think it's right
Yeah.
up here.
Yeah, it
Right
was
here
in,
by this flat rock, I believe. Yeah.
yeah, I think it was like right. I think it was like right in here. But it was facing this way. It was like right through here.
Yeah, on this flat here, right by the shooting tree.
Yeah, it was right here. You're still looking for holes. They'd be up there now. Yeah. Yeah, they told a lot of stories there.
Some of them were true.
Yeah, I was going to ask, are there any stories you might want to share about the Liar's Bench, or the stories that were told on it?
I never told a lie in my life, at least not till later on.
Well, if Grandpa told it, it was the truth. I mean, we wouldn't think of it any other way.
Yeah, there's no question.
But there was one man that passed away on there.
Yeah. I don't remember his name.
I don't either.
He hadn't been here very long though.
No. But they would talk about fishing, or they would talk about the plant, or sometimes I remember just having chats with my grandfather sitting there.
Do you have any memories of the water treatment facility being put in here, or anything that's just right across the way there?
I just remember it always being there,
Right.
and never was inside of it. It was generally kind of locked down and off limits, you know.
Yeah, very rarely did you see anybody up there.
Yeah, it was pretty much automated. They'd come up once in a while and you'd see a car there, but it was pretty rare.
And then did you say that you would go to the fish hatchery?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, we walked down there all the time.
Yeah.
They had some.
Stories you want to
They
share?
had some big fish in there too, boy.
So inside some of the buildings, they had different tanks, and they would start with the little small, and then when they would get bigger, they would move them to the next tank and the next tank, and eventually they would move them out to the outdoor ponds. And then when they were big enough, they would bring in a big truck with this vacuum truck and vacuum them up. And
Grandpa'd go get his fishing gear on,
Yeah.
and he'd wait till they dropped them, and then he'd go down there and catch them all.
Grandpa and his fly fishing, boy.
And it's funny because he was terrified of water.
Yeah.
He wouldn't bathtub. This much water was all that. He almost drowned once, but he'd stand in that thing.
Yeah, he'd stand in the river all day and fly fish if he could. You know, just having a good time, you know.
What are the largest changes you've seen with the landscape out here?
the concrete.
Yeah, the concrete, that little building there, you know. He said some of the rocks and things moved around, the pipes, and yeah. I don't know where they found the diesel tank for that used to be up there out of it. It was down ways. Yeah, it's just, it's changed in a lot of ways, and it's kind of,
And the
Needs a little
flags are
love.
missing.
and the flags, should be a flag up there, you know. I know there always was when we were around. It just kind of, it got beat up pretty bad, and it still needs a little love, you know.
Well, I think as an adult, I realize now how much upkeep there was to keep
Oh, yeah.
keep it.
It was nonstop. I mean, immaculate up here, you know. It's just amazing.
I know there was like a garage structure. Are there any other structures that you could maybe point out?
There were 2 garages back in the back. The one was the original that they stored the equipment in when they were building, and it was not very big. And then they built the other one afterwards. But yeah, we can walk up there.
Yeah, we used to do the pick of the loop depending on which way we wanted to park, where we wanted to park, and then we go around the back and go around those buildings, and then, you know, strategically park. Well, like with my mom, we'd have to go this way so I could get her out, drag her out of the car, and get in her wheelchair. You know, it's just like double loops here. It's kind of cool. Grandpa parked over there usually with this old Chevy on that side of right by the rocks where they're at up there. Remember that, and the station wagon was always next to the house.
And then I've heard the second cottage here that's now our welcome cottage. that was like secondary housing, I guess?
Correct.
Yeah,
Was it just used seasonally, or?
It was.
yeah.
And usually the people that stayed there, they only stayed in it when they were on shift. The one I remember the most, they live in Longmont, so when they would have their days off, they would drive down to Longmont and then drive back up either the night before if they were on day shift, or they would drive back up in the afternoon but if they had the afternoon shift.
Just because you mentioned it too, the dump pit. Can you just point it out?
It would be right down in here, a little ways back in the trees. I know it's still there.
We found it last year.
Yeah, we were here, my grandson, and we all found it. I don't remember how big it was. It was a decent sized pile of stuff, you know.
Well, they didn't have the dump on the other side of town. You had to do something with it.
Yeah.
And that was the
That was the non-flammable stuff.
Yeah, what we didn't burn down here and right down below here in the barrel wound up over there.
paper products and stuff. There was a big barrel right at the bottom of these rocks.
Any other specifics you want to point out just about the property while we're out here?
We were talking about the pin stock up there in the road. And
There used to be that fence that ran along here, guardrail to keep you from walking off the edge, and then the steps went down over here so that you could go down to the river.
Yeah. And this was all pretty smooth even then. That back in there was pretty smooth. But I know you could see the pin stock in the road up there. Section of it, you know. Like I said, it took a beating and it needs some love. It's changed a lot, but it's still the same, you know. I go right back to my memories are generalized, you know, going fishing with Grandpa and going downtown and driving the train and Brody's and all that, and then progress started knocking on the doors here. But yeah, the landscape's has changed, but you know, I guess that's the way things go. You know, remember the big trees that were there by the rock?
Right, yeah, the tree outside the house, that's where all the Easter eggs went.
Yeah, that's where the Easter eggs went.
Before we wrap up, I do want to give you an opportunity. I was curious, what do you think about the trail system down here?
I have never been on the trail system since it's been built through here. I think it's kind of cool, you know. I mean, it's just a little different.
Two of my grandchildren love it. They jogged it last summer. They went for a 5-mile run from about a mile down, and they went up and around and back. And then they promptly got in the river to cool off.
Yeah, they had a lot more energy than I do. I'll tell you that. I used to walk up in there all the time and go into the national park, and I probably said that before, but
They would go up to the campground and up to the amphitheater that was up there, and
go hang on.
the path ran right along the river at that point.
Yeah.
Of course, that part of the river bank is gone.
And that big giant pile of wood that I believe was
The
left
original
over
wood.
left over from the pin stocks. Used to be a big pile back there, and she made a clock for me out of some of it. That's cool. And I don't remember what else. The diesel tank was there up in there, and then the wood pile, and we used to go and climb on that, and just go on up into the park and act like we were supposed to be there, you know. Sometimes playing with some of the other kids, sometimes just, you know, walking the horse trails and stuff.
Yeah, climbing up that thing.
Free and easy. Yeah. I wish I had the energy now to do some of that.
So before we close, we always like to ask, is there anything else that you'd like to share that we might not have covered in the interview?
I just really appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, we do. It's important to us. And
Did you hear that?
yeah.
Did you hear that bugle?
Bugle.
Did you hear that, Cass?
Well, great. I want to thank you all for your time.
Well, we
Oh, thank
appreciate
you.
guys, and
Yes. Somebody
this is
taking an
great.
interest in it.
Kind of an honor for us, you know. So we're glad to be a part of it.